And now, from the HBO Real Sports Studio in New York, your host, Bryant Gumbel.
Good evening, and welcome to Real Sports, where we begin tonight with a trip to the United Arab Emirates. A small nation on the Persian Gulf, the UAE is in many ways a rare Arab beacon of Western values. It's an American ally with a burgeoning capitalist economy and an increasingly international outlook, as evidenced in sports by the all-star field it annually attracts for golf's Dubai Classic. But for all its 21st century progress, the UAE is also home to a sinister remnant of another time, a time when people were bought, sold, and kept as slaves. As Bernard Goldberg reports, it's all being done in the name of sport.
It's a clear morning in the Arabian desert, a good day to go to the races. Camel racing is the national sport here in the United Arab Emirates, the favorite pastime among the fabulously wealthy sultans who run this country. If horse racing is the sport of kings, this is the sport of sheikhs. You can't shoot footage like this anymore in the Emirates. These shots were taken a couple of years ago, before the sheikhs barred outside cameras from the races. And exactly what is it they don't want you to see? Well, take a look at the jockeys. They're not grown men like in American horse racing, but small boys. The smaller the boy, the faster the camel. And they're not locals either, but foreign boys, brought here by smugglers in the human cargo business. Many of these boys have been kidnapped from their homes in Pakistan and Bangladesh. Others simply bought from their desperately poor families for as little as $500, so they can race for the pleasure of the sheikhs, who bet money, cars, even gold on the races. There's a word we've heard for boys like these, a word you don't normally hear in the 21st century.
Are these children slaves?
Definitely. Definitely. Why not? They are getting nothing. And these are the ages to get some education. These are the ages to get some good food, some good health. And they are getting nothing.
Ansar Burney is a human rights advocate from Pakistan who has made dozens of secret visits to the desert stables where the jockeys are kept. He's seen how the boys live and work, which is why, so far, he snuck over 100 of them out of the camps and out of the country.
What do they tell you?
The atrocities. They will say, please take us away from here. Take me with you. Take wherever you would like. Take me from here.
This is a story about child slavery that the sheikhs who rule this land say does not exist. The United Arab Emirates, or UAE, is a small oil-rich kingdom overlooking the Persian Gulf. And on paper, they don't have child camel jockeys here anymore. In 1993, under pressure from the West, the sheikhs banned the use of jockeys under 15 years old and 100 pounds, a ban they reinforced in 2002. But that's only on paper. When we began investigating the story a few months after the latest ban, an early morning trip to the races revealed young boys everywhere. They were getting ready to race until the authorities spotted the camera crew. Then it became clear that the only ban the police were enforcing here was the one on cameras.
Cancel. No. علي من الشرطة أنا ما جود دخلت أنا من هذا خلونا على كيفه هو عيال يصور عيال حق يصورون براحين عيال حق واقفين هناك يصورون الباص شال الشريط خلى مخبه شال الشريط خلى مخبه منو هذاك عند ريال.
So to find out just what was going on in the world of camel jockeys, Real Sports took a trip into the Arabian desert. We went with Ansar Burney as he visited the camel tracks and stables, plotting his next rescue. Burney and his wife Shaheen took our British cameraman David Higgs, outfitted with a hidden camera, for a 2-week trek through the UAE. The trip began at a training session at the country's main track, where there were no photography signs everywhere.
So it's quite clear that what is happening here is something that they want to take place in secret.
And just beyond the signs were the boys.
Hello. You're a tiny little one. You're all right.
One by one, boys as young as 3 years old were strapped onto the camels to begin their practice runs. They were training in 110-degree heat, riding into the finish area, then running into trucks to go back to the starting line all over again. Every jockey we met was very young and a world away from home.
Bangladesh. He's from Bangladesh.
Right. Does he know how old he is?
Kitne saal ke ho? He doesn't know.
We asked one of the trainers how he felt about the work these boys do. But for these boys, the only thing tougher than a day at the track is a day at home. Just down the road from the palaces of the sheikhs are the desert camps where the boys are kept.
These camps are quite a bit more like a prison camp than a place for children.
The camps often have no furniture and no electricity, but they do have plenty of barbed wire, just in case the boys get any ideas. And behind the locked gates, you can see them doing every kind of dirty work.
So it's clearing up the camel dung.
When we met Salim, a camel jockey since he was just 3 years old, he was boiling tea for his masters. Boys like Salim, we were told, are virtually starved to keep their weight down for racing.
Oh.
They can't take anything, only this biscuit and water and nothing.
This trainer agreed to tell us about how the boys are treated. We're hiding his face to protect him from possible repercussions.
If a boy grows above 50 pounds, the trainers decrease his food. And if he's already not eating, they make him work to lose weight.
As for shelter,
What, here, on the floor?
Yeah, on the
This is where he sleeps?
on the fan.
Okay, well, it looks like this boy doesn't have a bed. He just lies here on the sand.
Yeah, he's telling us he sleeps here.
Right, that's where he lies.
So if they eat well, if they sleep well,
They will gain weight.
and that's the worst thing that could happen. They can't gain weight.
as bad as it is for some boys, it's even worse for others. Saddam told us his father back in Bangladesh had sold him to the camel camps, not for money to feed the family, but for liquor. Now he's got new problems.
Can we see?
Yes, cause when they hit him and he has loads of bleeding.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. और ये क्या है? ये चोट कैसे? ये क्या लगा? हाँ. This one is.
Yeah.
He pick him off the ground and throw him on the ground.
It's how they keep the boys in line, the trainer told us, and he showed us just how brutal that training can be.
Oh my God, whenever they're not happy with a child or he makes a mistake, they would tie him with...
Tie him to the chains.
And after he's chained up, the boy is hit, sometimes with his own camel whip. We asked the trainers at this camp if all the boys get this treatment. Moments later, one of the boys showed up, and we asked him if he'd rather go home to his family.
When this child first came, he was crying for his mother. So the owner said to the trainer, tie him up with rope. He would hit him and say, stop crying, there's no other option for you.
Heading to the capital, Abu Dhabi, Ansar Burney stopped off at the Pakistani embassy, where he learned of one boy who had been sent home just days earlier, in a box.
A boy died last week. He's about 5 or 6. He fell down from the camel.
So he was trampled by the camels. And we know, in fact, that he fell off the camel several times before eventually he fell off and was trampled to death.
Before we left, we made a final unannounced stop and walked in on 3 trainers and a few small jockeys, all sleeping together. We were told that 2 of them are, quote, lovers.
The big boy
Yes.
was on the top of the young one.
See, The trainers have sex with these kids, and these children know they don't have anyone with them to protect them. They will have sex with the kid, and then they'll tell him, "Listen here, you bastard. If you tell anyone, I will kill you right here."
And it's all happening at camps and tracks run by some of the wealthiest people on earth.
The ruling families are in charge of the racing industry.
Yes.
They run the tracks.
Yes.
They own the camels.
Yeah.
Do they own the camps with us?
Yes.
But if the children are slaves, there's no escaping this. You're saying the rulers of the United Arab Emirates, the sheikhs,
Yeah.
are the slave traders.
Sure. They are. Those who are doing it, they are involved in slave business. They are.
The track where we found these boys is run by the royal family of Dubai, the richest of the Emirates. It's the playground of the Crown Prince, known around here simply as Sheikh Mohammed. He's one of the richest and most powerful men in the Middle East, a man whose love of racing stretches far beyond the Arabian desert. Horse racing fans know Sheikh Mohammed as the man who had entries in 4 straight Kentucky Derbies a couple of years ago. Closer to home, he's spent untold millions in pursuit of camel racing glory. His family's complex includes a camel hospital, where his camels get the finest medical treatment, while new, faster ones are genetically engineered. These pampered animals train with the best equipment and cool off with daily dips in their very own pools. It's a life of luxury the camel jockeys will never know.
So the camels eat better, they live better. If they get sick, they get better treatment.
Very better
than the young boys.
Yeah, because according to these sheikhs, these camels are very expensive, but not the human beings, not the children.
Yeah, the boys are $500.
Yeah, and the camels are in millions.
And if you believe the sheikhs, everything we saw in the desert was just a mirage. Listen to the head of the Camel Racing Federation after the latest ban on child jockeys took effect in 2002. He made it sound like we'd have a better chance of finding a waterfall in the desert than finding an underage jockey in his country.
Absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible to find a jockey who is below 15 years of age, and it will never, never happen. I totally dismiss this argument. This is impossible.
But by the time the trip was done, Ansar Burney had a long list of boys he hoped to sneak out of the camps. It was just a question of where he would take them. Some of these boys, after all, were too young to tell him anything at all, least of all, where they might have come from.
Burney, UAE officials wouldn't speak with you, but I understand they sent you a letter?
Yeah, we tried to talk to them. And for a while, they indicated they would talk to us, but then they just stopped returning our phone calls. But we did get a letter from them just a few days ago. And the letter basically says, we're against this kind of thing. It's against the law in our country. And do you remember the scene in Casablanca where the policeman says, gambling? I'm shocked. Well, this is basically the Casablanca defense, that they're shocked that this is happening in their country, and they are adamantly, they say, against it.
That age ban of 2002, was it ever really in effect, or was it always just a guise?
It was always on paper. Reinstated in 2002 from 1993. So on paper, they've done all the right things, but the paper never jibed with reality.
Those who are engaged in this, are they immune to international pressure?
Well, you know, the United States can put sanctions on countries that do things like this, but what kind of sanctions, in reality, are you going to impose on a nation like the United Arab Emirates, where the streets might as well be paved with gold?
Yeah, it's like giving financial incentive to Bill Gates.
Yeah. What are you going to tell Bill Gates, that we're going to take what away from you? Yeah. They're immune in that the sultans and sheikhs run the country.
Makes it easy. As Burney noted, exposing the plight of these camel jockeys is only part of Ansar Burney's mission. Putting an end to the practice and saving those involved are also his priorities. We focus on those ends in the second part of our story from the UAE.
The child jockeys here have one thing in common. They all come from somewhere far away. For many of them, that place is 2,000 miles to the east, in the third world slums of Bangladesh. It's a country as poor as the Emirates are rich. The only resource they have in abundance is people. And that is precisely why the smugglers, Pakistani and Bangladeshi smugglers who traffic in little boys, come to desperate villages like this one, where they have a choice: steal a boy or buy one.
Parents are selling their children?
Yes.
In places like Bangladesh?
Yeah,
and
Bangladesh, Pakistan. Because they are very poor.
They're selling because they're very poor.
Very poor. They are dying without food, so they need some money for their children.
But often that money never comes. Once the smugglers get the boys, they usually pose as the parents themselves and pocket the small salaries that some of the jockeys are paid. And there's not much the villagers here can do about it.
I want to go over there and get my sons back, but I don't know where they are. I just know that they raced the camels.
Her name is Layla, and this is her fourth son, the only one she still has. Layla lost her first 3 boys after smugglers took the family to Dubai on the promise of work. Once they got there, the smugglers took the boys to the camel camp and had her sent home.
I will not give this son over to camel jockey work. I gave my first sons, but now I know that they are in trouble. I want to bring back the other sons from that work, bring them back in my own house.
But the odds are not in her favor. Even the jockeys who do make it out of the camps often don't know who their parents are or where they came from. So here in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, volunteers run a shelter where they raise and educate camel jockey orphans. Most were injured too badly or grew too big to be of any more use as jockeys. All of them are getting some sort of rehabilitation for what they went through at the camps. These boys are rehearsing a play about their former lives. Other boys have other ways of coping with the memories.
Here, the camels are racing. One kid falls from the back and the camera steps on the child. The child is yelling, "Save me."
Shojib has lived here for years. He can't remember where he came from, but he'll never forget where he's been.
I have this mark on my shoulder. The trainers burned it with a scalding iron rod, as I didn't prepare their meal properly because I was very sleepy.
Places like this one are rare. Countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan are too poor and often too corrupt to come to the camel jockey's defense. That burden is left to richer, more powerful countries like the United States. The U.S. State Department, which monitors human trafficking, used to pressure the Emirates over the camel jockey issue. But that changed after the UAE restated its ban against child jockeys in 2002.
Many countries are improving their anti-trafficking efforts. The United Arab Emirates is the first government to ban the use of underage, underweight jockeys in the camel racing industry.
The State Department declared the problem all but solved, and just 4 months ago, in its annual trafficking report, the department hailed the UAE as a model for the region in its excellent protection of children from camel jockey work. So we asked Colin Powell's top deputy on human trafficking, Ambassador John Miller, to take a look at what we'd seen.
When you look at that, what do you think?
It's a very powerful video. And it is appalling that in this day and age, this kind of slavery goes on.
And you don't run from the word slavery.
No. If somebody is held against their will and they're put in these inhuman conditions, yes, we're talking about slavery, the slave trade.
If that's the case, how does the State Department issue a report that says that the UAE, United Arab Emirates, is a model for the region and they're doing excellent work in this area? That is completely, with all due respect, totally untrue.
Listen, we don't apologize for having incomplete information. When we get new information, we use that information. This kind of visual evidence is the kind of evidence that we can follow up on. What about this? What is your answer to this? What is going on? Is this true? Isn't it true? If it's true, what are you doing about it?
But the State Department's decision to back off the UAE a couple of years ago came around the time the administration was courting friends in the Gulf to help in the war with Iraq. That included heavy lobbying of UAE leaders, especially the man in charge of their military, Defense Minister Sheikh Mohammed, the very same Sheikh Mohammed who spends millions racing camels. Today, the UAE is a key staging ground for American forces in the Persian Gulf.
And the fact that this is our staunchest military ally at a time when we need a military ally in the Persian Gulf, that has nothing to do with a report that says that they're doing so well in
I'll
this
tell
area?
you, what has to do with the report is when you have 5 or 6 people covering the whole world. That has something to do with the report. But I will tell you this, when we get information from what I know of the President and the Secretary of State's feelings about the slavery issue, the fact that a government is a friend or an ally is not going to keep this government from speaking out, and it isn't going to keep me from speaking out.
But Ansar Burney decided not to wait for diplomacy. In August, 2 months after he'd taken us through the desert, he returned to the camps, hoping to sneak out as many boys as possible and take them back to their home countries.
Whenever I saw any child in trouble, I saw my own child over there. And when you will feel that this is your child, you will sell your blood and you will try to help the boy.
Is your life in danger?
Sure it is. Sure it is. There are so many attacks on my home, at my office, at my vehicle. I received several telephone calls that you will be in problem, just stop it, and if you will try to rescue another children, you will be in trouble, and like this. So it's a risk on your life, but to save the children, you can take any risk.
On his return to the Emirates, Burney looked for some of the boys he'd already met, and he found this one in an Abu Dhabi hospital. His name is Shaquille, and he'd had his stomach split open after he fell off of a camel. Shaquille wasn't ready to leave the hospital, but working around the clock, Burney and a few supporters found nearly 24 other boys. They were driven out of the camps and shuttled into different getaway cars.
We rescued this boy, and we are just transferring him to another car. Yes. बस अब जो भी रास्ता मिले ना, रुकना कहीं नहीं है, बस ये अबू धाबी से फौरी हमने बाहर निकलना है बस.
Burney's team rounded up 23 boys in all Pakistanis, and took them to a safe house near Dubai. Inside, while volunteers prepared exit visas, the boys played, like little boys do, for the first time in years. For one of them, 7-year-old Nadim, who still bore the bruises of abuse, the rescue came not a moment too soon.
It's difficult to look at these tapes and not, I don't think I'm being too dramatic here, and not weep at what you see. Has that ever happened with you when you see it?
Several times, so, because I'm a human being. I'm a human being too.
It's difficult for you to see what you see?
It is difficult. Sorry. I have a pain. I always have tears in my eyes because they are human being too. Treat them like a human being.
Just days after the rescue, under the cover of darkness, Burney took the boys to asylum at the Pakistani consulate. The next day, they were back in Karachi, where Burney showed the boys their homeland for the first time in years. After working the phones and tracking down leads, he took some of them back to the villages they had left behind as toddlers.
I don't want to save few children. I don't want to save dozens of children. I want to save all the children who are working on slave as child camel jockeys in a miserable, miserable condition. So I am asking the world to help me. Help me to stop it. help us to stop it.
Bernie, Ambassador Miller says we can follow up on visual evidence. Does history suggest they will, or they'll do nothing?
Well, first let me say the visual evidence he's talking about is from today. This is
current footage. There's no
current
stock
footage.
stuff.
It was shot just a few months ago. It's current stuff. I got the impression that Ambassador Miller is a real straight shooter. He seemed like an eminently decent guy. He's already spoken to the ambassador in Washington from the Emirates, and I think that the State Department is serious about this.
You correctly focused on officials in the UAE, but what about officials in places like Bangladesh and Pakistan? Are they complicit? Are they apathetic? Are they ignorant?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. They send a lot of their adult workers to the UAE to work, and then they make money and send money home. For a desperately poor country like Bangladesh, if they make an issue of this, what happens if the UAE, and I'm saying what if the UAE says, don't send any of your workers here? So they don't do nearly as much as they might have if they were a wealthier country.
Final note, Ansar Burney is asking the world to stop it. How? What might work?
You know what usually works? Money usually works. The UAE is trying to become